Hello, and we are by Lange and Söhne, and this is a special year for them because it is 25th anniversary of a very special, iconic watch, one of my favorite of all time. But we're not going to talk about this immediately, and we're going to talk about an evolution of the Zeitwerk, right?
Evolution, you said? I would prefer it almost a revolution. It's not to see at first glance. It's the Zeitwerk date. You would say, okay, they just integrated the date into a Zeitwerk. Yeah, but there comes more to that because everybody knows the famous outsized date. Now, of course, something like that doesn't fit in a Zeitwerk because it already has two big windows for the time. So it would be very confusing. We found following solution and we created a glass ring around the movement. A glass ring which is partly printed, beautiful, light grey. But we left the numbers of each date open. Underneath you have a date ring with a red segmentation with slides underneath. 10 years ago I was not convinced that we could raise the number of hours. And you know, the Zeitwerk days has the double. 72 hours. And a thing where I'm very proud of, to be honest, this watch is thinner than the original Zeitwerk. Okay, 0.3 millimeters doesn't sound much, but for a watchmaker it's quite scary. 0.3 is a lot. One pusher is for the date adjustment. The second pusher, very convenient. As soon as you push, you can set the hours separately. So the minutes, of course you have the crown to set the time and the minutes, but for easy traveling, time zones, ahead, the hours separately. So, and everything, of course, not only the time, but also the date, instantaneously jumps at midnight. We have a patented double barrel stacked on top of each other. We changed the famous remontoir system, so there's a complete new movement.
Okay.
So it has a very elegant look, very easy to wear.
Yeah. It changes quite a lot.
I'm very proud wearer today, in fact. So.
I can understand.
The Datograph and 3 complications. So it means Datograph, perpetual, tourbillon. We launched it a couple of years ago in platinum with a beautiful black dial, limited edition 100 pieces, sold out. So what are you going to do next? We tried to surprise the world by introducing, for us, a completely new color. It is 18 karat, pure, solid 18 karat rose gold in the dial and packed in a white gold case. And it's a surprising combination for us, to be honest. But until now, it's a huge success. Everybody is, wow, getting it out of our hands. So it was a huge success. And of course, it has all the features. The Datograph, which means chronograph, flyback, instantaneously jumping minute counter, perpetual calendar, all the features, and a power reserve. Very discreet power reserve indication. Power reserve is 50 hours. But yeah, personally a highlight is of course the movement, which was a big challenge. The Datograph is seen as a kind of iconic chronograph. If you touch that by integrating a tourbillon, you have to be very careful. I'm proud on this one. A beautiful big cage. And of course, the stop tourbillon. It's Lange and Söhne.
Yeah.
As soon as the tourbillon has a second hand, there's a stop second on. This is a limited edition of 100 pieces.
Okay. So the good news doesn't stop there, and we have another few models to talk about.
Exactly. You remember the jumping second from the Richard Lange family? We launched that a couple of years ago in platinum limited edition. Sold out. 2 years ago, pink gold version, sold out. What's next? White gold case, beautiful black dial. And of course, it is the Richard Lange with the jumping second was a 0 reset. Because that was not complicated enough. So we put on top a 0 reset. Never done in the industry actually. And the little red triangular here at around the 6 o'clock position. What does it mean? It's not a power reserve indication, because if you have a watch with constant force, what it is, you don't need a power reserve indication. It's not important how much force there on the spring is, because it's constant force. It's always the same. The watch runs for 42 hours. After 32 hours, this triangle jumps red and informs you, hello, still 10 hours to go, please wind me.
Like a little warning sign.
Yes, it's a little warning sign. So beautiful execution, white gold case, black dial, and the good news maybe, it is not a limited edition.
Mm-hmm.
So we are also good in not doing limited editions. So yeah, it is a beautiful movement. Of course, the big balance wheel, the whole complex mechanism for the zero reset system. You see the little remontoir hairspring, because it is of course a remontoir system which recharges every second, which has as a result a jumping second. And the show goes on. Maybe some of you remember it in 2001. In fact, it was the last fair for Mr. Blumlein. They launched the Langematik perpetual. At that time, first perpetual calendar without size date and a one-button corrector for easier correction. So if you push the button, all the indications of the perpetual calendar advance by 1 day. Today, that is standard in all our perpetual calendars, but at that time it was novelty. And a unique combination was the zero reset on the second hand, because it is driven by the beautiful saxomatic. It is the Langematik caliber with the sax-o-mat function. Saxony, O from zero reset, and automatic with a 3/4 rotor made out of solid gold with a platinum weight on its outer sides. It's a beautiful 38.5 watch, because this is a honey gold version, limited. Not only the case, the hands and the hour markers are made out of honey gold, but we also made an embossed circle on the dial, so we gave it a more 3D dimensional for extra intense luxury. You could call it like that. So a beautiful limited edition of the Langematik Perpetual.
Okay, now we're going to talk about a very special watch for Lange, right?
This is the watch where it all started with, 25 years ago. And before we start talking about the watch indirectly, it's of course grace on two important visionary men, Walter Lange and Mr. Günther Blumlein. We never spoke so much or made something on watches with the name of Mr. Blumlein on, because we know that he hated that. For Mr. Blumlein, the watch is the hero, which still is today for us.
Hope so.
It's very important. We continue like that. To honor that, we have on the limited edition, because we have an anniversary edition of the Lange One, which is the Lange One, of course with the new movement from 2015, but the typical 38.5mm case. And we have now, and that is inspired by one of the first models in the Lange One family. The original Lange One had the hour markers, the applique, and the 12, 3, 6 and 9 position made out of gold. But there was also a version where it was printed in blue, and that inspired us to make this design. It has blue hands, argenté blanc dial, with also something we never did before. It's a little bit recessed around the counters. It's a bit recessed. It's a thing we never did before, and it's quite different, but that's exactly what we want to do. We did not want to make a replica of what we did in 1994. So beautiful white gold case. And coming to the case, let's turn around. It is a typical half hunter case. So you have a half hunter case back with a beautiful engraving of the Stamhaus, the former headquarters of Lange. Today again headquartered, of course. And the names of Mr. Günther Blumlein and Walter Lange to celebrate. Once we open, of course, you have a beautiful view at the movement. And that is the Lange one with 72 hours power reserve, the new generation, so free swung hairspring. We have instantaneously jumping, outside date at midnight, and you know the famous engraving on the balance cock. There is, and it looks almost like the tiny little outside date window with the numbers 25 and a flowerish motif, and we made a special coating at the bottom of the engraving in beautiful blue. The blue you recognize from our moon phases, so it's a special coating. It's a very discreet highlight of this beautiful movement. 250 watches. It's not gonna stop here. 250 of these watches, limited edition, every month. The next 10 months will be, let's call it a surprise.
But based on this model.
That could be very well.
Well, Tony, thank you very much for your time. And again, bravo for this beautiful watch.
Again, as always, a big pleasure. Thank you very much.
Great. See you soon.